The courts of law give us the chance to judge innocence and guilt. But is guilt reduced or removed by the passage of time? That's the question raised by our next document. For more than 300 years, European merchants forced Africans onto slave ships and transported them across the Atlantic Ocean. And Britain played a huge part in this human trade. British ships carried around 3 million slaves to America and the Caribbean, where they worked on plantations, helping to build the wealth of the City of London. The trade made many organisations rich, and I've discovered in the archives that includes a very surprising name. God Almighty has set before me the abolition of the slave trade. So wrote the great reformer William Wilberforce. And yet, during the 18th century, there were slaves in the Caribbean who bore branded on their chests the word society. This 1817 register of slaves in Barbados reveals that society means the honourable and reverent society for the propagation of the gospel in foreign parts, the missionary arm of the Church of England. And here is that society listed as owning some 400 slaves. Listed here then is every man, woman and child owned by the society. We see that their ages range very considerably. Cudjoe is 70 years old and he's working as a domestic. It seems that Ben George can be set to work as a grass gatherer even though he's only 10 years old. Some slaves are still alive at a very grand age. Here's Rita, who's 90 years old. She's infirm. She's no longer working. But on the other hand, Orkoa and Kwashiba, who are both 80 years old, are both still working as nurses. The documents don't reveal the conditions that some of the slaves would have endured. 12-hour working days in intense heat, punishments such as the lash or being put in leg irons. For the slave owners, like the church, it was the profit of the plantation that mattered. These pages bear the musty smell of their 200 years and also the stench of hypocrisy. Today we can still see the wealth in our capital constructed on the foundations of slavery. The Corporation of London had its seat in the magnificent Guildhall. Sir William Beckford made a fortune from slave plantations in Jamaica and was twice Lord Mayor. William Beckford, the Lord Mayor, might have been focused on profit, but the church added a moral purpose to slavery.
They recognise that slavery is problematic, but they also recognise that these slaves, the Africans, come from this dark continent, and therefore they need to be civilised. And slavery, while not perfect, provides an opportunity for bringing Africans into the body of humanity.
Does the Church of England succeed with this mission of civilising the slaves?
It's a complete failure. They failed to convert the numbers that they had hoped to, partly because Christianity provides a point of resistance for slaves. How do you resist this terror? Well, you refuse to take on their religion. They brand slaves with hot irons as a sign of ownership, and they flog them to death, and they also sell them off when they can't work anymore.
So they don't treat them any better than slaves on any other plantation?
That's what the historical documents suggest, that the Church of England plantation is no different to any other plantation.
Glory, glory, hallelujah, when I lay my burden down.
The international slave trade was abolished in 1807. But it wasn't until 1833 that Parliament outlawed slavery as an institution. compensation was paid, not to the slaves, but to their owners. Documents show that for freeing its slaves, the church received nearly £9,000, a fortune at that time.
We have in Britain today a history of churches, of church buildings that are built on the blood and sweat and brutalisation of Africans.
Old pirates, yes, they rabbi, sold I to the merchant ships.
In 2006, the then Archbishop of Canterbury apologised for the Church of England's role. But neither it nor the state has met calls to pay reparations. Its historic actions clearly weigh on the conscience of the Church of England.